Hello and welcome to the Gooners Podcast, special episode. I told you that the intro was a little over the top and I probably undersold it a little bit, but our podcast is one where we usually try to have a laugh, take the piss, talk about Arsenal, and try not to get too wrapped up in all the roller coaster and negativity from what's going on the pitch. But today's going to be a little bit different. First of all, anyone who's ever been to the pub with me will tell you that I never drink Guinness. It's just not my thing. I'm a lager type of guy, but at 10 in the morning today, I think there's a reason to do so. So I'm going to make an exception. So today's kind of an example of what we want this podcast to be all about, because we have both the somber but also really meaningful opportunity to spend today talking about somebody that and something that makes me sad, but more than that, happy at the same time. And today we're going to raise a glass to the life of an amazing Gooner, a son, a husband, father, grandfather, friend, mentor, maestro, DJ, hugger, and so many more things. David Faber, also known to many as GoonerHolic. And I'm pleased to be able to do this. And I know this is an odd thing to say on Christmas Eve, but I know Amanda can attest. In the Jewish religion, the anniversary of a loved one's passing is as or more of an emotional moment and a ceremonial moment. So to me lately, between that and the way that we've been performing on the pitch, I've been thinking of Dave a lot more. And so I'm glad to be able to do this. So first, a quick rundown is what the show is going to look like today. I'm hosting solo without my running partners, Andy and Eoin, because they both had some last-minute family commitments, holiday commitments, but I know they'll be watching. And, I want the next hour to be just a celebration, an introduction to people and from people who, you may or may not know, and just a positive experience. So we'll be spending time with Dave's family members who we're thrilled to have with us, some of his friends who knew him well, and just kind of hearing from people all over the world, all over the Gooner sphere and all of that, who really kind of can tell the story of how Dave has shaped a lot of our Gooner dumps. So if you're listening to this on a replay, some people listen to the podcast on iTunes or on Spotify audio only. This is going to be a more visual pod. So if you can, please try to catch the replay on YouTube. So now, for some introductions, I am very thrilled to be joined by two members of Dave's family. In, I think, the upper left of your screen, if it's the same for everybody, we have Dave's stepson, Daryl, and his grandson, who I'm told is a GoonerHolic, Ethan. So, gentlemen, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you with us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having us along. Thank you for doing it.
It's my absolute pleasure, and we'll find out how this Guinness goes down in just a second. But to get me to drink something I wouldn't normally drink is a testament to the inspiration. Next, our two admirer-holics for the first round today are first a longtime friend of mine, Amanda, aka PG, Princess Gooner of the Highbury Squad. Welcome and thanks for joining us, Amanda.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for asking me.
We'll turn it back to you for a second, but I wanted to thank you for joining us. And then Paul Brooker, someone who I only know because of Dave. And there are a lot of examples of that, and I'm sure a lot of examples in everywhere of that. But Paul, pleasure to have you on. You're one of the crew and the founding members of the GoonerHolics Forever blog, right? And
absolutely. Yeah.
And over the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to be hearing from both of you, as well as some folks that couldn't join us today. So before we go to you proper, I just want to play a message, one of many that came in from someone that was a great admirer and cohort of Dave, and that is Ed Quigley, also known as Quiggers. So here's some thoughts from Ed.
So Dave, also known as GoonerHolic, was to me, there were kind of two Daves, really. There was the first Dave that I encountered, which was on Twitter. And then I got to know him in the flesh mostly at the Tollington pub before and after games. And over the years, he became quickly, apart from a kind of reasoned authority on Arsenal, also someone who clearly was a man of values and integrity, but was also just really just cool. I mean, he you wouldn't know from his music choices, from his beliefs, how old he was. He just seemed relevant to a lot of people, and personally, he was really encouraging to me in various things that I did. If I was doing a fundraising thing, he'd be one of the first people to donate, and it was because of him and his retweets and sharing my requests for support that I would get, you know, decent sponsorship from other Arsenal fans. And he was also really supportive to decisions I made in my life in terms of work and all the rest of it. So when we lost Dave, we lost someone who to me was really inspirational, and someone that you could, you know, genuinely look up to. And as I've said in a few tweets previously, he supported Arsenal the Arsenal way. And so I'm really pleased that so many people want to celebrate his life, and I'd like to definitely join that list. So thanks, Dave, for everything you gave all of us. You missed, but not forgotten.
Thank you, Quiggers, for that, and there are more to come in that vein. But Paul, I hope you'll forgive me. I'm going to go to Amanda first because Amanda can talk, and we want to make sure that she gets her time in, contractually obligated. So,
it's funny enough, I'm just looking on my phone to the last messages that Dave and I sent to each other, but I can't find them at the moment. I'll look later. Go on, sorry.
This is like a continuation of your feel-good podcast last night. I mean, it's good for the soul, and it's one reason why I'm hungover this morning. But I'd imagine that your relationship with Dave started through a Bergkamp Wonderland, or if I'm wrong, correct me on that. Tell us a little bit.
Do you know what? I don't know where it started. It's definitely Twitter or the Tollington. I think Twitter. I'll never be. I won't be one of these that comes on the show and says, "Oh, how you're all saying about his blogs and everything." Dave and I had a very different relationship. He was so supportive to me. It was unbelievable in my life. I separated from my husband. He could see my tweets. He would DM me and just say, "Keep in there, kiddo. Just keep going. You're just such a lovely person." And just generally, and then I wouldn't speak to him for a week or so. I wouldn't see him. I wouldn't tweet or anything. The support he gave me, I will never forget. One of the nicest humans I've ever met. And I'm not just saying this because his grandson and his stepson are on this show. I didn't know they were going to be here. I was trying to think this morning how I would express, because I would never attest to being the closest. I didn't read his blogs. That's one picture I had done with him last year. I don't know why. When we bumped into each other at the Emirates, I went, "Come on, let's just have a picture." Don't often do that in a weird way. So it was lovely that I've got that with him.
Well, you do, but that's okay.
No, but Dave and I weren't close. It wasn't like that. It was, I'd bump into him to the Tollington after a match and we'd have a chat about the game. And he would just say to me all the time, "Stay you. You're just fabulous. Just stay you. And good luck with everything." And he was just one of the nicest people I've ever met. And generally, it's more the support I could see generally what he was like on Twitter, what he was as a person, as people respected him so much. It was so lovely. And honestly, every time I met him, if I bumped into him outside the Emirates, bumped into him in the pub, what a lovely man. Honestly, and he makes me really tearful, because that was the last time I think that we bumped into each other, was the summer before last. And he met Carl, my other half, and Carl was like, "Oh, it's GoonerHolic." Everyone knew who he was. It was really strange. Wherever you went, everyone knew Dave. It was just lovely. He's such a lovely man.
And not because he put himself out. I mean, look,
No.
Podcasters and bloggers these days, and I'm not excluding myself from this. I love some attention. I'm the first to admit it. Amanda, I think you do too.
No, not like you.
But,
not like you.
But it was organic with Dave. I mean, he was known and loved and recognized not because because of the frequency and the loudness of his communications, but because of the quality and the genuineness of his communications. And
well, just put the football aside. When I was going through a rough patch generally in my life, just to DM me out of nowhere and say, I've seen your tweet, you stick with it, you be you, just keep going. It just lovely. People don't do that. They should, but he did. And I will never forget that. And when I heard that he'd passed away, I was so upset. I felt like we'd lost such a great human. And the one regret I have is not having him on our podcast, actually. I always joke to him, oh, come on our podcast, come on, like that. And he'd go, oh, you don't want me. And I'd go, yeah, come on. And we just never did.
That's exactly what he would do. We finally got him on once, and I'm thankful that we got him on the once. But, it's...
You don't want me. What do you want an old man like me for? And I'd go... I just went because my dad is in his 70s and beyond obsessed with Arsenal. And I just remember thinking, oh, Dave and my dad would get on so well, just so well. It'd be lovely. But he wasn't local to me, so we never got that chance to get together. I'd loved him to have met my dad. But I can't honestly stress enough, one of the nicest men I've ever met. Forget football, just generally one of the nicest men.
Absolutely. And Paul, I know that your interactions with Dave go back to the GoonerHolic blog, and there's a community in there, isn't there?
Oh, there really is. But just to follow up on Amanda, there's a couple of other people I know who've had similar experience to you. There's Lucy, who I met with Dave, and Victoria, who was terrific when Dave died, in keeping us in contact with you guys in the family. And they were the same. They were big Arsenal supporters. But I think Lucy used to sit with Dave in the stadium in Block 32. I mean, Dave and I were the same age. Several references to old men so far today, so that's fine.
I'm finally feeling a little young and spry. I mean, we should do this more often. I don't want to do this more.
At times like now, when the team's rubbish, it's good to be able to sit back and think, yeah, we were there in 74 and 75 and 82 and 83 and years like that. So have faith, you younger ones, have faith.
It's interesting you say that, Paul. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but if Dave was around now and I would be moaning, he would say to me, we'll get there. We'll improve. Keep the faith. He would be so much more. He's got that lovely. He had that lovely positivity about him, didn't he?
Well, about 2011, I stumbled on his blog, and it was immediately obvious that he was someone that wrote with passion, but also with balance and humanity, and also the drinks afterwards. He had this incredible community going in the drinks that was my introduction to it. And he'd let people ramble on. If they got too political or too sharp with each other, he'd come in and just step a word in. He was the landlord of the GoonerHolic's bar, and he said, "That's enough. That's enough. Cannons out, gents. Cannons outwards." That was one of his favourite things. And I started to write in there, and in the drinks. And my thing was that I go to a fair number of away games. And I used to put little reports of what it was like to be an Arsenal supporter on an away game. You've got the motorway travels and the midnight service stations coming back and the curry houses and the pubs and the songs that you're singing. And he was so encouraging about my writing. He'd email me separately or DM me separately and really encourage. So this is good stuff. And I think he gave me a couple of main pieces. Although Dave used to write virtually everything himself, and how he managed to do that, I do not understand. I mean, you guys that run podcasts know it's just relentless, isn't it? It comes round and round and round. But he always wrote and beautifully. And there was such a mix in there. We've already talked about the music. At about 11 o'clock at night, he'd probably be sitting there with a glass of Irish by the side of him, and he'd be going through YouTube and saying, try this, try that. And it was brilliant. And that linked up with other people. And for me, that led to saying, are you going to the Chelsea game at the weekend? Yeah. Can I see you in the Tollington before? And we met up. And, you know, when we were chatting, it's funny. Almost the last thing we did talk about was football. We talk about cricket, or we talk about life. He wanted to retire and couldn't. And he was a bit frustrated about that in the last few years. And of course, every 2 minutes, someone had bumped by him and they knew him. Everybody knew him in that pub. Everybody knew him in the ground. And he was just a really fantastic guy. I only met him half a dozen times, but I'm so grateful that I did meet him half a dozen times. One was with our host, Mike, who was over for a trip. And we met up on the terrace of the Tollington. And I'm very proud that my banner, my photograph on my Twitter account, Countryman 100, is the selfie that Mike took that day, because I don't take many pictures. And it's there, and there's Mike, and there's me, and there's Dave, and there's one of your American colleagues, Mike. And that's well done to have it there. So there we were.
Oh, it's lovely.
Yeah. That was the beginning of one of the more memorable Arsenal days for me. It was the day before my birthday 2 years ago, 11th of March, home Watford. The day that Petr Cech actually saved the penalty from Troy Deeney of all people. Wonderful win that day, and then the 12 pins afterwards for us when Kevin Campbell came for the first time and met a bunch of his fans and people who are now his friends. So it was just the perfect start to the perfect day, and seeing him that day was
when he passed a year ago. Like you, Amanda, everyone's reaction was shock, but our reaction was, we can't let this die. We've managed to go past 5,000 drinks on his last post, chatting away and obviously hoping he was going to recover. And then we just very quickly set up a WhatsApp group and formed this blog, GoonerHolic Forever, GoonerHolicsForever.com, where we just try and keep it going. We try and have the same values, the same rules. We've got a thing, the governor's rules up there, which said what Dave would allow and what Dave wouldn't allow, and we've done it in his memory. It's been a thing of joy. We do share the writing out, unlike Dave, and so there's a group of us that write on it. But that's been an absolute pleasure, and this adds to it, Mike. So thanks very much indeed for organising this and for asking me on, mate.
Well,
it's actually
a pleasure.
Sorry, Gum. I was just going to say, I was with him in the Tollington once. I think it was after a game. We was watching another game, just standing by the bar, just having a little chat. And I remember him, you know, he didn't agree with some of the things I said, but the way he does it is that he's so calm and lovely. And there was no animosity or you're wrong or what you're talking about. It was just a nice chat. He was just a lovely human. I don't know. Was
this the time he pulled back and hit you afterwards?
Not Dave, never.
No.
He was so lovely. He was protective of us, and he was very close to Victoria and Lucy. And you know, they kept me in contact during that time of when he was ill, and you know, Victoria did so much on Twitter. You know, and thankful to her and Lucy. I know they miss him terribly. They're such lovely girls, and Lucy especially was very close to him as well. And you know, he just had this aura. He was like lovely. I can't say any other words about him. And, you know, as you get older, people come and go in your life. But I just loved seeing him. He was just nice.
Yeah. No, it made you smile. And there was always a hug. And I'm a hugger. You're a hugger. It's you know, you have a connection with people who their first thought is for a hug. So, just amazing inspiration, and appreciate you guys sharing your feelings with him. Ethan and Daryl, I'm going to next play a video from Tim Stillman, who I don't know if you could say worked with him, but was collaborated with him, let's say on the Ars blog and in a couple other areas. So Tim wanted to make sure to have a welcome video. So here it is.
Hello to everyone at the Gooners Podcast. This is Tim Stillman here, columnist for Arseblog and podcaster for the Arsenal Vision podcast. Just really wanted to contribute to this, I guess, this celebration episode for the life of Dave Faber. Good friend of mine, someone I knew for many, many years, and someone I still miss very greatly. If you never met Dave in person and you interacted with him online, all I can tell you is that the Dave you interacted with online is exactly the Dave that you'd get in person. Warm, gentle, kind, funny, self-deprecating, always with a smile for everyone. Never heard him remotely raise his voice or anything like that. Just one of the good people in life, and one of the best people I ever met, certainly, and someone who I know is greatly missed by me, my wife, and my family, and by everyone in the Arsenal community.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, thank you, Tim, for that. I mean, having watched through all the videos, that were sent in, it's just everyone was just unique in its own way. And I do want to point out, since we have talked about Lucy and Victoria, they have both behind the scenes been incredibly helpful and sweet and just warm in introducing me to Ethan and Daryl and to Sandra and the family, and just while they weren't able to participate on the live show today, they have been instrumental in helping me. So I really, really appreciate them. Victoria's in here. She had put up a comment earlier, which made me smile. I'm going to take about 5 minutes for myself here, because the elephant in the room, other than just me in general, is the obvious question. Why are you hosting this tribute when there are people that have known Dave longer, known him better, have larger platforms? And I have to say the reason is because I really wanted to. I've spoken with Andrew Mangan. I've spoken with the Bergkamp Wonderland lads, who worked with him for a long time. I've spoken with the family and Sandra and Pauline and Daryl and Ethan and Victoria, and I've just been touched to have their blessing to do this. And my experiences with Dave Faber are, from everyone today, probably the briefest, but that's kind of the whole point. Everyone from anywhere in the world, for any level of connection, has their own story. So here's mine. I've been a Gooner for 32 years, but really only in the last 6 or 7 years have I played the social element and learned about the social element of being an Arsenal fan. I mean, I don't live in London. I live in a suburb of Washington, D.C., and it's not that readily apparent that there are other Gooners around. And about 7 or 8 years ago, it became much more so through supporters clubs and so on. And ultimately, in 2016, at the suggestion of my partner Andy on the podcast, he decided, let's do a podcast and let's do it together. And when we got started, I was never really a podcast or blog reader, much like Amanda. I mean, I don't know Dave from his GoonerHolic blog, although I've certainly gone back and exposed myself to it. I know him from a Bergkamp Wonderland, having listened to that podcast to brush up and find out what a real podcast is supposed to sound like. And early on when we got started, Danny from Bergkamp Wonderland just supported us, and as he always does with other podcasts. But when I came to London for the first time after starting the podcast, which was about the spring of maybe March of 2017, I reached out to the entire ABW crew to see, who lives in London, who's around for the game. It was a Man City game that we drew against them. And the one person who was able to make it out and meet me was a guy who didn't even live in London, but was coming in for the game, and that was Dave Faber. We communicated. He said, "Where are you going to be? I normally go to the Tollington, but I'll go where you are." We met at the Gooners pub, which was right by where I was staying, and just had an amazing time. And I didn't know him very well yet at that time, but at the end of the day, I felt like he was my brother, my father, in a sense, just from a footballing standpoint. And so I'm going to share a couple pictures if I can get this coordinated. This is within moments of meeting, back when I had hair. This is Dave and I inside the Gooners pub, of course, with his glass of Guinness and my non-Guinness glass. A couple minutes later, we met Bobby. This is Bob Lex on Twitter. He was was a part of that day as well, because he came to the pub excited to meet Dave. I may have interacted with him as well, but it was always good to spend time together, and that was just a wonderful day for me. Our next encounter in person was the day that Paul and I met as well, March of 2018. I've talked about that one already. It was just a great day, and that day at the terrace on the Tollington was just the most incredible people. All of the people I love to hang out with, people I have since come to love to hang out with, and of course, Dave holding court was always nice. And the last thing I want to mention is one of my friends that I travel with a lot to London. Most of the times I'm there, he's there too, is my friend Tom Rosenhammer from Richmond, Virginia, which is about 2 hours from me. And one of the things that touches me the most is seeing how much Tom grew to love Dave, because Tom is a unique character. We get on really, really well. He's really kind of a deep and emotional character. And when he met Dave, and I don't know if he met Dave through me or in spite of me. I don't know. But Tom really took a loving, not a liking, but a loving to Dave, and always wanted to see him every time that we came over. And I know he communicated with him frequently. And I want to play something that, or actually just show something that Tom wrote. And I'm not sure how easy this is to read, but Tom wanted to have this read, and I think it's beautiful. So Dave Faber was the consummate gentleman, genuinely loved by all. He rarely cursed, was usually in a good mood, and was a wonderful conversationalist. Dave was the type of person who was guaranteed to elevate the mood every time he turned up at the pub. Because of that, I strive to be as calm and cool as he was. He once called me a really nice guy on a podcast, and I'll never forget it, because there are plenty of people who would never even think to describe me that way. That's true, although he is. Dave was always a big music fan. Those are the tweets where we interacted the most, him telling me about acts and songs I'd never heard of. Music is the one thing that outside family and friends means more to me than even the Arsenal. So it meant a lot to me to connect to him on that level. They say that kids are more likely to mimic their parents than they are. Heed their instructions. I think I might have gone offline for a second, but they say that kids are more likely to mimic their parents than they are to heed their instruction. Dave was like a father to a lot of us, and to honor his memory, I'm making an effort to be more like he was. David, you are a legend, and you'll be missed. And that's from Tom Rosenhammer, who on my very last trip to see Dave, and of course to see the Arsenal, we had trouble meeting up before the game, and it was devastating to me, because it was the first time I'd been to London without seeing Dave before a game, and in many years. And Tom had wanted me to give him something, which is a challenge coin. I don't know what the significance of a challenge coin is to Tom, and he said, please, if you can, get this to Dave. So we walk into the game, which was Liverpool at home, 2019 November, I think. It was the game where we drew with them with an amazing performance. And I was sitting in Jack Stevenson's seats, which are amazing seats in Block 32. And so who do I see outside of Block 32 but Dave? And so I had a chance to get him the challenge coin for Tom. He appreciated it. He treated it as though it was the most incredible gift he'd ever been given, and that's it couldn't have been, but he treated it as though it was, and that meant the world to me to be able to do that. And unfortunately, I had my daughter, my son, my wife, and I all went to London last year. We arrived on the 26th or 27th. We were there for the Chelsea and Manchester United game on either side of January 1st. And I had been in touch with Dave earlier in the year to find out if he'd be there. He let me know that he traditionally does not go to the New Year's games because of an anniversary of his father's passing. And that, it was disappointing in the sense that I wouldn't see him, but it made all the sense in the world. And of course, while we were on our way to London, we got the news about his passing, and it was just devastating. But I, along with apparently hundreds of other people, reached out to the club. They already knew. And so at that Chelsea game, which the game wasn't great in the end, but to be there and to see Dave's piece that Arsenal put in that game day program just meant the world to be there to support him. So that's my history with Dave. And the last thing before we switch to kind of our second shift, if we will, of the podcast is a message from Drew Thompson, who worked with Dave, who admires Dave. And if I can get his video up, this will be helpful. Where are we? Here we go.
So I didn't really know Dave incredibly well, but I did have the opportunity to podcast with him on a few occasions at ABW. And in those periods, it was always just, he was like a refreshing voice. No matter how things are going at the club, good, bad, indifferent, no matter the angst that we suffered through within the waning thing of years, he was always a sense of calm and positivity. He was always trying to find, the best way out of something. And I think that's maybe something that we as Arsenal fans at the moment are taking for granted, given the state of the club and the worries. So for me, I kind of feel like, Dave's voice right now would really be something that a lot of people really could take solace in. And even though he's no longer with us, I think just the kind of person he was, the kind of supporter he was, the unequivocal passion that he had for this club, I feel like that's something we should all kind of strive, to be as a fan. I think a person of his legacy deserves the utmost respect from all of us. And, he's definitely gone but not forgotten. And I wish his family the best. And I don't think they'll ever forget him either. I don't think it's possible to forget somebody like him. So, miss you, Dave, and all the best to you, your family, and yours. And
Lovely from Drew, and thank you, Ola. Appreciate that, and salute to Dave. I never met him, but when I listened to him on ABW, he always came across well. Love to Mike and Amanda for doing this. Very thoughtful. So thank you, Amanda, for helping me. I'm enjoying this a lot. I hope Ethan and Daryl, I know that, I haven't really come to you to chat yet, but like I told you before, I feel like you're the guests of honor, and we want you to hear what other people said about him. But we're gonna let Amanda and Paul go at this point and bring in Curtis and Laurie. So thank you both for joining us. Let us know, where we can find you and the work that you're doing, and again, thanks for being a part of this.
Can I just say Merry Christmas to Ethan and Daryl? Obviously, I don't know you, but it's making me well up a little bit. He was just lovely. And just remember the good times with him. That's all. That's all I can say. Merry Christmas to everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes me really tearful because he was so lovely. I'm at the Highbury squad with Sophie. I don't even know what my Gooner Girl 1969 on Twitter. Come and follow. Thank you for inviting me.
Check out the Highbury squad if you're not already. They're doing the best content right now of anybody out there. The most consistent and entertaining and unique, and so it's definitely worth a follow.
Mike, can I just say that tomorrow on GoonerHolicsForever.com we have a special tribute piece to Dave, written by 4 of the people on the blog who knew him best and their personal memories of him. It'll go up sometime Christmas morning, so take a look at it if you can. I'm at Countryman100 on Twitter. I'll promote the piece tomorrow morning as well as soon as it goes up.
And we'll we'll be sending out the link as well. So if you happen to follow us and not Paul, you'll get the link tomorrow for that.
Fantastic.
Thank you both. Merry Christmas, Paul.
Thanks, Mike.
Happy belated Hanukkah, Amanda, and we'll see you in a little bit. All right. So next joining us are Curtis Powers, who resides in New York City. Am I right, Curtis?
Yes, Brooklyn, New York City, exactly.
All right. And Laurie Laker, who lives in Colorado. He is my along with Andy, who I host the podcast with. He is also an expat who resides in Colorado. So it's not quite a substitute. It's better than a substitute. Laurie's the earliest riser of all of us today because it's 8 a.m. or at least it's 8:30 a.m. now, and he's got his Guinness. I have to say this is not bad. I don't know why I was so dead set against Guinness.
It's breakfast in a glass. Mark. I don't know what was wrong with you.
It is. I mean, I had a Pop-Tart before the show, and I didn't need one because this is fantastic. So, let me get back to my notes here. First of all, happy birthday, Laurie. It was Laurie's birthday yesterday.
Thank you very much.
And I know that you're someone that Dave meant the world to. Curtis, I've known of you and kind of on the periphery. We know the same people for 7 or 8 years, but I don't think we've had the pleasure of meeting in person, virtually or otherwise yet. So thank you for joining us. And there's a reason that I brought these two on together. And not only are these two lads massive Gooners, but they're musicaholics as well. And I know both of their relationships with Dave went much deeper than just football. And I'd love to hear them describe how they related to Dave in their own words. But before we go to Laurie and Curtis, let's hear from Dave's mate, Matt, who is also known as Herbie Gooner on Twitter.
Matthew Tackling, or Herbie Gooner on Twitter. First met Dave in the summer that Vieira left Arsenal. Met him on the Arsenal Land Forum. I think it was North Wilts, I think it was back then. Still meet a lot of people from those days. I mean, we met up several times over the summers back then. Dennis's testimonial, membership days, football matches and such like, England games. And he was always a great writer back then, and I know a lot of us pushed and suggested that he take on a proper blog, and he did. And he carried on in his own brilliant way, and it's such a shame what happened, and miss him terribly, to be honest. And this is a great tribute, hopefully, to a great man.
Bobby, I don't know if you were here 5 or 10 minutes ago, but I showed the picture of you, me, and Dave on the patio of the Gunners pub that first day that we met. So I too will miss having drinks with him before the games. So Laurie, where am I? If you can get us started off. We've spoken a lot about Dave in the last week or so, and you're one of two people who truly inspired me, along with Jason Davies, who'll be with us in a bit, to have this tribute. You're an expat, like we said, living in Colorado, a wonderful, emotional, fantastic guy. So I'll just turn it over to you to share with us how you met Dave and how he's impacted you.
So first of all, Mike, thanks for having me. This is brilliant. I'm thrilled to be here. So I never met Dave in person, which off the top is one of my greatest regrets ever. I missed him by 5 minutes at the Tollington once, and those 5 minutes will haunt me for a long time. But my relationship with Dave was quite frankly normal. He and I first connected, obviously, about Arsenal, but quickly it became just a deep, deep and loving friendship based around music, around football, and about caring for each other's well-being. So if I was low, the first person in my DMs, in my chat, would be Dave, just saying, "Hi, mate, hope you're doing okay." Over the years, that meant the world to me and continues to mean the world to me. I still have all those messages, and I look at them when things are a bit rough. People who have been on this previous to me have said this far better than I ever can, but not only was Dave a brilliant writer, but he was a brilliant listener as well. His musical knowledge was second to none. One of the things I loved chatting with him most about was music, and I don't think I'll ever forget a moment that I had with him a few years ago when I actually introduced him to a new artist I found, and he liked it, and he played that record a lot. It was Leon Bridges' Coming Home. which was a great kind of 60s revamp R&B soul record. Yeah, he was just a lovely, sweet man who cared about people, irrespective of football. And it was an honor to know him, to call him a friend, even from a distance. And I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you, Laurie, for joining us. I appreciate it, and I've enjoyed our late night conversations over the last week or so, most of which I had a couple bottles of red wine in me for, and so I had to go back the next day and revisit what we talked about. But it was all great stuff. So, Curtis, you're known in the Arsenal world as I believe as a DJ, as an influential figure in the growth of Goonership in New York City. Thanks for joining us, and please tell us about Dave and what he meant to you, and kind of how you came to know him.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks to everybody, and happy Christmas to Ethan, Daryl, and everybody on here. And it was quite interesting getting to know Dave, because for me, back in I was doing the same thing as everyone else. Back in I was looking through like tweets and direct messages and things like that, just to see like what conversations I had with Dave, to see if there was anything else additionally I could pop into this. But at some point he was so kind, because he just wrote, I want to say that it was probably around like 2011, 2012, just writing to Arsenal New York City that we had started not too long before that, saying just, how he had heard about us through the Ars blog and things like that, and how great that it was. And I wanted to echo something that I feel like a lot of the people earlier in the show said. And it's a characteristic that is very quickly dying, I feel like, in the means of, just probably because of social media, is that he was always incredibly balanced and optimistic, and not just optimistic for the sake of optimism, but he wasn't the doom and gloom. He wasn't that political cliff that, he wasn't the second things got bad, it was sack everyone and sack this guy and sack that guy. And I really enjoyed that, because I've always been kind of, I don't want to say an eternal optimist, but definitely a bit more stoic than negative, and it was always just refreshing to hear Dave's take on anything from politics, or like literally politics, or the politics of Arsenal, or the politics of our fans. And he was just such a uniter, and it's sad that the world is moving so much further and further away from that. So I just wanted to kind of echo that for a moment. But through the years, and I remember the night, I remember being in the studio. I do a radio program that I've done every Sunday night for the last 7 years. And I get a tweet while I'm on air that he was listening, and he was loving it. And in my mind, I was like, wow, I didn't know him as a person at that point yet. And it was just filled with, I was just so excited, because to me, he was a figure that I was already looking up to at that time. And so for him to come on, be listening and just picking me up, I learned later on, and I wanted to wear this today, because the weekend that we played, it was one of those, it was like Milan, and it wasn't wasn't the Emirates Cup, was it? It might have been the Emirates Cup. It was one of those. No, actually, it was the weekend where, it was the Legends football match, and the reason I was saying AC Milan was because there was some Milan players. But he gave me the shirt, because through the years he learned of myself being like a big Weller fan, and this was right around the 14. Wait, let's see. Does it have the date on it? I don't know. But anyway, on it, it's got lions and the flowers, and it says, "No matter where I roam, I'll return to my English rose," which was a jam song by one of my favorites. But through the years, like yourself, Laurie, I would, I knew that he absolutely loved Al Green, and I believe that I actually played an Al Green song for him 2 weeks ago on my radio program, and dedicated it to him. Like yourself, Laurie, like whenever I tried to highlight new soul music, because he was a lover of soul music, and when he would hear the stuff, I let him hear Stone Foundation, our friends that actually record with Weller, things like that. And he just loved it. And it was just amazing when I stopped seeing him tweet me during the shows, I remember, feeling sad. And I remember hearing, last year, and my first phone call was to Andrew Mangan. And I was really, really sad. And, I don't know. It's a loss to us all because such a hugely positive figure, kind to everyone. Similarly, I don't curse on my radio because I always just appreciated that the way that he presented himself. So kind of echoing our man in Richmond. He's just a.
Well, he still curses, but he does it less.
No, I know.
And he doesn't do it at people anymore. So
yeah, he's my point in that quote is just that he's a person that you wanted to emulate to be like, and not in a on a soapbox kind of way. He just was a good example of a good human that you wanted to be like, and I still do to this day. And so. I've just got so much love for him and love to Ethan and Daryl. I lost my father when I was young as well. So, I know you're, well, no one knows, but, we all have versions of that feeling. And so love to you guys on this Christmas, and love to Mike and Laurie and everybody who's come on here just to share the love for this guy. So
thank you, Curtis.
Well, Dave.
It came as somewhat, not recently, but well after I met him, what his music connection was and to so many people. And I've never been a huge music person. I know, Tom again, who I know is in the chat now, and Curtis and Laurie. I know I've seen the two of you, Tom and Laurie, go back and forth about music, and I know how much it means to Tom, and it's so emotional, and so is Arsenal, and to have two layers of connection to somebody like that, I'm not sure other than my wife, who I have multiple areas of connection to, and two of them being my kids. To have both of those things in common with somebody has to have been a kind of just a surreal experience. So we talked about Victoria earlier, and she was beautiful and friendly and wonderful enough to send me some memories. So I'm going to play something from Victoria right now. If Victoria's in the chat, if she can remind us of the background behind that picture or that video, and I just love the video, the screenshot of him on the television during the Wigan game. I'm assuming, was that the FA Cup semifinal? Maybe I'm not 100% sure, but just the passion from that picture, I love that. So we have a number of other people who had sent in some pictures and memories that I want to kind of whip through right now if I can. So the first is Groover Blog, who I believe is a French gentleman who sent in both a picture and a comment. And again, in case you're listening rather than watching, I'll read this for you. It says, "Hello, guys. I had the privilege to meet Dave in 2016. It was after a glorious game against Chelsea when Sanchez and Ozil both scored 2 wonderful goals." How things have changed. My friend took this picture of me and Dave with Dave Seeger, who's also in the picture, and a massive, supporter and friend and colleague of Dave's. I remember Dave as a nice, humble, and smiling man, enjoying to be in the middle of chanting Arsenal fans. He was very happy to meet a French fan and told me about his working experience in France. one of the best memories of my life as an Arsenal fan. May his and I believe it says may his memory may his soul be rest in peace. So thank you for that. And next we have Ian Davidson. Wanted me to share 2 pictures. This is, I believe, a pre-FA Cup victory toast before the Chelsea game. A lot of optimism at that moment, which I don't think a lot of people were feeling perhaps before that game, but it worked out. And here's a larger picture, with more members of the family. Ethan and Daryl, can you? I mean, there's Ian in there, and can you go around the table and kind of tell us who's in that picture?
Yeah, no, they're not our family, not that I'm aware of. Anyway, unless we just discovered a new family in Christmas 2020.
so just friends then that were there that day. Yeah. I certainly wanted to be able to identify everyone that was in there, but if I didn't know them already. But Ian, thank you for sending those in. John Livermore. Most of the pictures that John sent in were from Lord's, and this is another area that I lived 5-minute walk from Lord's for 2 years, but I was a teenager and I was more interested in football and didn't really understand cricket. And it's the greatest, one of the greatest sporting regrets is that I still have a chance to, I suppose, but I never made it to Lord's when I actually lived in that immediate vicinity. But Dave loved his cricket, and I think there was kind of a posse that he would go and see it with: Reese, John Livermore, Harry Napier, Andrew Napier-Wilson. I know Akil is also in here, and so here's another picture of everybody at Lord's. I think this was a summer activity for Dave when there was no football, and here's Andrew, Harry, Reese, John, GoonerHolic, of course, and Akil. Just a few more things, and I was thrilled to be in contact with Dave's daughter-in-law, Daryl, your wife, Sandra, who shared some very special moments as well. So I'm going to just show some pictures, and we'd love to hear from you if you have any kind of memories of where, what was going on here. I mean, we could certainly see that this is, these are the GoonerHolics.
Of which we never knew. We never knew Ethan and Rowan. Rowan's obviously Ethan's younger brother. We never knew about the GoonerHolics until last year, actually, when we realised he'd probably be at the Tollics, and then when we were coming down for a match day like that, would go, I've got to go and meet the GoonerHolics. And so that was the first time we ever sort of became aware of it, which was lovely. But I think that was November 2018, wasn't it? So I think that was probably that was the last game we would have gone to with Grandad, and to put it in summary, it was always
that would probably have been the Liverpool game that I saw him and gave him the challenge coin then, because it was around that time.
Or maybe it had been the year before. I'm trying to it would have been one of the last. It would have been one of the last times. But Rowan always said, so we'd get on the train. We live in the Midlands now. We get on the train down. We get to Euston, and then we walk to King's Cross, and there would be sort of Dave waiting outside, and then we'd sort of go for food and drinks before the game. And then Rowan said, actually, and I think it was quite poignant, and this was before Dave became ill, that actually, while it was lovely to go and watch the game and go down and watch the game, actually it was quite sad, because at that point Dave would walk us to the block where our tickets were, and then it was time to say goodbye. So yes, we had the distractions of watching, the Arsenal, but yeah, I thought that was quite poignant of Rowan, and he mentioned that a while ago. It's a bit of a sad moment as well.
That's beautiful. Here's David. Looks like at holiday time.
That's at our house, yes, in this very room, actually, yes.
Oh wow, okay. And this is it's a nice background for a picture with your grandson. I when I have grandchildren, this is basically like what our kitchen looks like. So.
Well, we went there because the place we were going to go to eat had changed, so we went somewhere else, and then we were just walking down, and I'm sure it's Holloway Road it was on. We suddenly came across it, and it sort of sells cheese as well. I can't remember the name of the shop, so Dave sort of said, "Oh, should we go in here?" So we went in here, and he decided, there we are. So he decided to treat us as he always did. I can't remember how much the bottle of wine was. I don't want to know. But yeah, it was lovely. But ironically, even with Rowan, the youngest one, they did offer if Rowan wanted to taste some wine with his cheese, but he declined.
That never happens over here. We have to learn from you guys. It just makes for more cultured adults. That's all. But good job on him for declining it. Makes him look good. What's the name of the GoonerHolic?
That's Ruby. So yeah, she's 5.5 now, but yeah, she was Dave. I know when Dave was in hospital last year, and certainly in the early part when we weren't sure what was happening, but there was the possibility of maybe him still making it round ours for Christmas at the time. It was probably about October time. Yeah, we were talking about Ruby, and yeah, he sort of said how much he missed Ruby. So yeah, they had a nice little bond.
And I'm told that the last picture that we had, Lucy was in as well. Was this the one?
No, that's.
It was the one from. It was the one from the FA Cup tribute, I believe that he's talking about. Here's another one. Golf. Now Dave was a member of a club that was pretty important to him. Is this at the club or is this just?
No,
this
is
putting practice
just down the road. It's only a little par 3 course, but we wanted to go round with Grandad for quite a while, and then made it happen. And yeah, I'm pretty sure he scolded us both, to be fair, on that day.
Well, I mean, that's just not everyone has the opportunity to meet, in my case, or spend a tremendous amount of time with their grandparents. I mean, I know people who have had 15 years with their great grandparents, and then others who unfortunately never had the opportunity to meet one or more of them. And it makes me feel good to know that. I mean, it's unfortunate, that it wasn't able to be forever, but just to see you guys enjoying time with your grandfather and knowing how much he clearly loved spending time with you is heartwarming.
And I think with both Ethan and Rowan, it's sort of also, I mean, he loved them regardless anyway, but Ethan had always played football. So he'd, since the age of 6 all the way upwards, and ended up captaining the team. So when they could, they come down at the weekend and sort of watch Ethan, and both of them played golf. So that was something they had in common. And now Rowan, 2 years ago, took up cricket. And that's Ethan when he's tiny. And so Rowan now has taken up cricket, and he won the President's Cup this year for the juniors in terms of the junior that's done the most. He was decided to be a wicketkeeper last winter, did a load of indoor training, and now playing for the adult team. So I know Dave will be looking down on Rowan as well as a budding little cricketer. So it sort of ticked the 3 boxes of the sports that he loves, really.
Oh, that's wonderful. What a tribute to him. So at this point, we're gonna move to stage 3. Daryl and Ethan, thank you for walking us through Sandra's pictures. Laurie, Curtis, thank you so much for coming on and joining us. Really appreciate it, and it's been a pleasure chatting with you both offline and online. So anything you'd like to kind of plug or talk about, or any last words that you want to say before we switch over? Starting with Laurie.
I think one last thing about Dave is that so I'm on the board for Arsenal America, the Arsenal supporters group here in the States, and about a year and a half ago, I founded a local branch called the Pikes Peak Gooners here in Colorado Springs. And in trying to get the word out about this group, the first person I talked to was Dave. And immediately, no questions asked, he retweeted, told everybody to follow us. And it was just a massive boost to our credibility in the community. And it got us on the Arsenal America register. And I've always been grateful for that, because he didn't have to do that. He just chose to do that for someone he liked. And to my experiences, that was Dave. He was just kind and giving and always had time for good people. So I'm thrilled to have known him. And it's been a real pleasure to be here. And I'll be in the background listening. And Ethan and Daryl, thanks for being here. It's lovely to see you both. And happy Christmas, everybody. And cheers, Dave.
Awesome. Cheers. Thank you, Laurie. Curtis?
Yeah, I just want to thank everyone, and thanks to everyone sharing their stories about Dave. And I've not, obviously due to COVID, I've not been back actually since right before last Christmas, and so I can't say that the Tollington will feel the same without seeing Dave. Sat in a little section right off to the back. But yeah, thanks for doing this, and I hope everyone has a happy Christmas. And I'm optimistic that 2021 can only be better than this thing that we've been in. So come on to something better. But much love to everybody, and thanks for having us. Follow Arsenal NYC, or I'm at Curtis Powers. That's Curtis with a K. I'm doing a Christmas radio program today that I will give a shout to our man Dave as well. So 2 to 4 p.m. on thefaceradio.com. Peace.
Beautiful. Thank you, Curtis. Thank you, Laurie, for joining us. I'll talk to you soon. And now joining us, we have two jokers. Welcome to the podcast. Let's see, my official introduction. We have a couple of jokers. We have Dan Betts, who's literally known as Joke AFC or Joke Man. I don't know the etymology or the history of that, but I'm sure we'll find out.
It comes from a gamer tag. It's meant to be a reference to me being Scottish, so Jock. But
Jock. Okay. Well,
if I put JOCK, my immature friends would rhyme it with something else of the male vernacular.
Exactly.
So I had to take a C out. So
he's an author. He's a dude. He's a Gooner, and he reached out to me when I mentioned the show and really wanted to be on. So I couldn't be more thrilled to have you on. We've interacted about a lot of things, including and this is another kind of Dave influence, including our charitable efforts on the podcast at Gooners versus Cancer that we do, which I neglected to mention earlier. Much like was the case for for our previous guests, he's helped us, he's helped me with my charitable endeavors as well. So so thank you again, Dan, for joining us, and then Jace. 2 pods in a row with Jace, but Jace is another joker, but he's better known as Jason Welsh Justice Davies. One of the people I've yet to meet in person who I need to. He's an amazing friend of the podcast. He's a personal friend who I do anything for as long as he doesn't ask me to do anything. So Jace, thanks for joining us on this somber but special occasion.
I wouldn't miss it, mate. Darryl, Ethan, lads, how are you? It's been a while.
Good to see you, Jace. Good to see you.
Good to see you, boys. It's really lovely to see you. And Jock, I get finally to pod with Jock. I'm not being funny, guys. This is dream come true time. This is dream come true.
It's been a while, mate. We go way back, but this has been coming for quite some time, yeah.
And I think this is another part of the sort of Dave influence, isn't it? He was always somebody who brought people together. And I had the pleasure of meeting Darryl and Ethan earlier on in the year, due to unfortunate circumstances, obviously. But it's been such a difficult time. Okay, we know what happened, but Dave's influence kind of carried through, and you had the pleasure of meeting lovely people through such a terrible incident, and that was nice. And I remember talking to Ethan and Rowan after the funeral, and we stood there, and these 2 young lads, and Ethan's just grown so much since. He's shot up, he has. Where did that come from?
Tell me about it. I'm only 5'7".
You're stuffed now, Darryl. You're stuffed.
Well, Jason, again, thanks for joining us. You guys did a lovely tribute on a Burkamp Wonderland earlier in the year. You kind of hosted and led it up, and I've listened to it again recently, and it's fantastic to hear. It's just wonderful words from you, and clearly you had a very deep and intense relationship with him, and I couldn't do this pod without having you join us for that. So like we've been doing, before we really get going, I want to make sure we get a couple of video messages in. So first one is from someone who just about everybody knows, but very few people have actually seen, and that won't change with this video. I'm in the club who's seen him before, and I've been sworn to secrecy, but from Gav at She War, who I also had the pleasure of spending some time on the Highbury squad with last night, has some words for Dave.
Hello, it's Gav from She War. Yeah, no, Dave, Mr. GoonerHolic, a legend of a man. I only really knew him online and by doing various podcasts with him, asking him advice. He was always very, very helpful and always only too willing to help me with my little shop. And, you know, he bought loads of stuff off me as well over the years, which gave him enjoyment, gave me a bit of pride that someone like him is buying stuff off someone like me. Just a great Arsenal man. Sorely missed. Yeah, can't believe how quick it's gone. God bless.
So thank you, Gav, for sending that in. Now, Dan, tell us about you and Dave. I know you had mentioned something about a story from an FA Cup final. So
yeah.
Let's hear about that.
Yeah, thank you, Ethan, Darrell. Lovely to meet you. Thank you for joining. It started. I've been a blogger for about 7-8 years. It was more a case of I had a really terrible job, and I needed a form of catharsis to purge, because I was basically I was a tram driver at the time, so I was penned into this little cubicle, and I wanted more for myself. So I started to blog, and in my first year, Dave Seeger, who's been mentioned previously, he asked me to. He'd noticed my work, and he always plugged my work. And he said, "Listen, I've been invited to attend the 2014 FA Cup final press conference. We need a writer, and I'd love to lean on your expertise, so to speak." And obviously, the fanboy in me jumped about 10 foot in the air. I was like, I snapped his hand off. I was like, yes, 100%. So at the time, I drove my little red Vauxhall Corsa up to the training ground. And it still feels like a dream. Got to the security and I said, "Yeah, I'm just here for the press conference, and just slid my way into the car park in amongst all the Lamborghinis and the blacked out Range Rovers was my little Vauxhall Corsa, and I'm ashamed to say I had stickers in the back of my window plugging my blog. And I went to the reception. I was floating on a cloud, looking at all the memorabilia that was on the walls. I was at Arsenal, and I'd only been writing for a year. I had like 500 followers on Twitter, and I have to say, I have to point this out, that Jason from day one plugged my wares incessantly. So thanks for that, Jason. I'm always saying thank you, but now I get to say it technically in person. So I make my way on my own. This 5'4" little bald-headed dude. Makes my way to the press.
Daryl's towering over you, mate.
my elves from the North Pole tower over me, to be fair. So that's not a biggie. I'm used to looking up to people. Talking of looking up to people, lovely segue. I make my way into the press conference room, and there is a smorgasbord of cameras and filming equipment and professionals. And I see on this table Dave. Never met him before. He was one of the main reasons I started up. I read his work and I thought, yeah, this is what I want to do. And he was the first person to stand up and introduce himself. And he introduced Tim Stillman, who was there, LeGrove, who was there. And we were the contingent of Arsenal bloggers who were allowed to attend the press conference. And he just regaled me with stories, initiating conversation. But it was the fact that he stood up. He could see that I was like a rabbit in headlights. He could see that the fanboy in me was close to wetting himself at one point. And he just initiated conversation straight away. There was a bond, and he just made it feel so easy. The skill of the man to build up rapport so easily. I mean, that's not many people have that. But I just plonked down next to him, and we both, even though the guy had been writing about Arsenal for years, had been an Arsenal fan for years. you could see that the fanboy in me was also in him. So we were at this press conference, and when Arsene Wenger came in and was answering questions from the major tabloids at the time, we were sat at the back, and he had stars in his eyes just like I did. The press conference, the questioning ended, and I went for a cigarette outside. Arsene Wenger, it's my one claim to fame. He walked past me, and I wanted to sing to him, but I had something in my throat. I froze, and all he did, he looked at my cigarette.
What were you going to sing, like opera, or
no, I was going to sing. There's only one Arsene Wenger, of course.
Okay.
I'm still a huge fan of his, but I froze, and he looked at my cigarette and just shook his head at me. So
of all people, though, I mean, a
Exactly.
reformed smoker himself, I guess those are the people that usually criticize the most.
Exactly. So I went back in, and we were allowed to go to the training pitches. Me and Dave went down there, and we just leant on the metal railings and watched them do the thing for the first 10 minutes before they got into the real nitty-gritty of tactics and whatnot. And after that, on my rare forays to the Arsenal, because tickets are expensive. I always bumped into Dave, whether it be at the Tolly or the Gooners pub. He was always there, and he introduced me. He was my extension into the world of social Arsenal. So whoever he introduced me to, he was like, "This is da-da-da, also known as," and he would give me the Twitter tag, and I'm like, "Oh, that's you, and you're meeting me," and it was always Dave who was the segue into it. I met some wonderful people through him, and then I wrote my book, which involved a fair amount of research. I put together a chapter.
This is Almost Invincibles, is that?
Yeah. I've also churned out a 30th anniversary edition, which is out of the shops now, and. I wanted to write a chapter that was, because I wasn't a fan at the time. I was 8 years old. Yes, Jace. Yes, he is my number one cheerleader. This man, I love this guy. I wanted to write a chapter that was for people who were there, were lucky enough to be part of the fan group, and who experienced it. And then that way, I mean, I think that's the purest form of reliving something, because I can write about it till the cows come home. I can include expert opinion. I mean, Amy Lawrence was involved, with the wonderful journalist who writes for The Guardian. I had David Seaman, Lee Dixon, David Hillier, Nigel Winterburn, Alan Smith, who wrote the foreword for the book. But I wanted a chapter exclusive to what they experienced. And the first person I reached out to was Dave, and he gave his. Not only could he write amazingly well, and it was so easy to digest. I think that's a real skill. I mean, you can write about stuff, and you can include loads of information and loads of stats, but reading something of his, like if you read his blog, it just flowed, and you digested it, and you consumed it, and it stayed in your head, and that's what I wanted to aim for. It was human, it was from a fan, but it didn't.
Daryl, I don't mean to interrupt, but Daryl, do you know of his background in journalism, or is it one of these things that was just a passion and a labor of love that he kind of self-taught?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, yeah, it was just a passion and self-taught. Yeah, totally.
Wow. Well,
I've always wondered about that, because I mean, the quality of his writing is something that goes noticed immediately.
Mm. Yeah, he was one of the originals. He was one of the original bloggers. He was there from the start, and I think he probably
he's the blog father to Andrew's podfather.
Yes, exactly that. And he contributed to my book in a big way. And just every time I went to the Arsenal, he was there. And like it was referenced by Laurie earlier, and Curtis and Amanda and Paul, and your good self, Mike. His DMs were always open. I know that has a nefarious meaning now when you slide into someone's DMs, but I don't mean it like that. It didn't matter when you messaged him or what you messaged him about. He was always there. And I know it doesn't matter if you met the man, like Tim Stillman referenced earlier. He was the same person online as he was offline. If you met him, if you didn't meet him. So if you met him online as GoonerHolic, that was Dave.
Yeah.
I'll leave it there, because there's no more to say.
Speaking of DMs being open, about 18 months or so, I was going at it with somebody who I don't get along with very well. Real pain in the ass on Twitter, and
There's plenty of them.
There's only one of this guy, but it shouldn't come as a surprise. But out of nowhere, and I'm all worked up as I get, and out of nowhere, I get a private message from Dave, unsolicited, unaware that he was even following any of this. It was short and concise. It basically said, you're giving him exactly what he wants, and he's like, if you must, have one final salvo and then bow out. And he used a word to describe my counterpart that started with a C, and it's one that I've never heard him say before, and I know it's out of character, but what it did was it made it clear that he was on my side, but that I was the one that needed to be the bigger man, and it was the most fatherly interaction that we had ever had, and of course he was right, and of course I may or may not have listened then and in the future, but I wish I took his advice more often, but it left an impression on me. And Amanda's mentioned supportive direct messages. You've mentioned that, and he took the time and picked his spots as to when to lay a hand on your shoulder virtually and give you some advice that clearly he had picked up over the years. So I wanted to share that story. So before we go to you, Jace, and open the floodgates, I want to share another video sent in by one of Dave's admirers. And Jace, this is someone you know very, very well, Mr. Simon Collins of the Evening Standard. So let's hear what Simon had to say.
Hi guys. First and foremost, just want to say it's a fantastic idea of you to do this for Dave. I'm sure everyone will be saying great things and amazing things about him, and what I say probably won't do him justice to how great a guy he was. For me, the memories I have of him of the times we did the pod together, the times we would blog together, he would be someone you'd bounce ideas off. He'd always read your work, give you advice, give you tips, and for someone who we all know was a fantastic writer, that for me was great to have someone like him to lean on and to talk to about things. And as a person, I think anyone will tell you, if they met him, he was one of the nicest people you could possibly meet. And at a difficult time like this, where we're all on our own to a large degree, stuck, in different tiers, isolating and whatnot, I think he's someone who probably would have found this really, really difficult, because if there was anyone who loved spending time with people, who loved hugging, having a drink and socialising, it was Dave. So thank you guys for doing this, for bringing us all together and paying tribute to a great man, and I hope it goes as well as it should do.
Thank you, Simon. Jace, Boyo, let's hear it.
Where do you start? We did the ABW tribute to him. We just kept it purely Bergkamp and lads. Simply because Dave had so many friends. There were so many people. Okay, there was the cricket crew, there was the Arsenal crew, there was the golf crew. Do you know what I mean? There were so many layers to his group of friends. It was unbelievable. You simply can't take it all in. After the funeral, we were in the pub, we chatting, I'd been talking to Darrell, talking to Ethan and Rowan. And the girls from Sonning Common Cricket Club came up to me, and they were talking about his cheeky grin, and Dave had that devilish smile at times. He's been a little bit roguish and stuff like that. And whoever you spoke to, you found sort of common ground and common experiences that you'd shared with Dave and they'd shared with Dave. I love the fact everybody talks about, oh, he's such a lovely bloke. I remember we did a podcast one night and we were chatting afterwards, and there's a certain BBC TV presenter who I don't like very much. And I didn't kind of hold back on what it's not the one you're thinking of probably, okay? But I didn't hold back on what I thought of him. And Dave turned and said, oh, I totally agree. He's an absolute plonker, isn't he? And you're just chatting away with all this. And then you're having a lot of fun. You're talking about football, music, cricket, and what have you. And then he turned and said, right, got to go, the management's calling. Pauline's calling. That's it. Done. Okay, he's got to go. You know, he's under orders now. And it became a habit with us all. You know, doing those podcasts is so much fun with these guys. You know, you become friends so quickly. And when England were winning the World Cup in cricket, you know, myself and Jock, okay, don't feel the same about England cricket as Darren and Ethan, right? You know, we don't at all.
Fair.
But there's Livers, there's Dave, and what have you, and I was so chuffed for those guys. You know, when they won it, half of me's heartbroken because I don't want England winning anything. Sorry, guys, I don't. Okay, but when you imagine Dave and Livers and all the boys so happy, so chuffed, you know, a little bit of you melted and you thought, good for you, boys, good for you, really, really pleased for you, and that was him. You know, he was just such a guy who he inspired loyalty in people. When I first met him, OG was over from Canada, and in the morning, I was staying in OG had an Airbnb in Islington. I met we went to Five Feet place first. We were having breakfast in Five Feet, and Dave didn't come to Five Feet. He can't invite. Oh, no, I don't want to bother anyone. We're having bacon sarnies around there. We met Dave in the pub, okay? And we're all drinking. I haven't getting the first rounds in and what have you. And Dave went to the toilet or something, and OG turned and said, Jace, he said, that's freaking GoonerHolic. It was as if he'd met, you know, it was as if he'd met Muhammad Ali. You know? I turned and said, I know. and it could only have been a couple of years earlier. I was talking to Raj Patel, and Raj is another one of Dave's cricket friends, another big cricket friend, and a music man, and Raj manages the Bootleg Beatles, and you know, him and Dave are big mates. And I wasn't really impressed with the Twitterati. I had my little Twitter circle, and that's all I kind of cared about. Everybody else is kind of by the by. I said, was this GoonerHolic and Raj? He said, oh, that's Dave Faber. He said, oh, what was he like then? He started following me for some reason. I said, you know, what's a big account like that following little me? I said, Dave's lovely, brother. And Raj isn't impressed by many people. He's not impressed by many people. But Raj continued to wax lyrical about Dave for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and talk about how Dave made him think differently about the world. Instead of being hot-headed about stuff, you know, that influence Dave has of just, you know, calming you down and just a couple of little words, and all of a sudden you're thinking, yeah, why am I being foolish about this? Let's just relax and enjoy. You know, look, I can carry on talking all day about Dave. But, it was an absolute pleasure that, you know, I had to pod with him. It was a pleasure to drink, have a beer with him. It was an absolute honor to call him a friend. You know, it kind of struck me at the funeral where of the ABW boys. Ellis, who's a nurse, drove from Norwich. Carl came off a night shift on the underground. He's an operations manager in the underground. He came off a night shift, straight from the night shift to the funeral. Neil Chimp came from London. You know, no messing about. People travelled from everywhere. Josh Daw drove down from Blackpool. There was never any doubt that we wanted to be there for Dave. You know, he was somebody who inspired loyalty. He was somebody who inspired goodwill. You know, he had a little bit of a dark side, he had a cheeky side, he had a little bit of a roguish side. He could be a little bit woe and a little bit way, you know, and I adored that about him. But, you know,
I've heard a story about him giving it large to some Wigan fans at the last game at Highbury. Not Wigan fans, the players, right?
Look, these stories, those are the ones you want to talk about, okay? But we won't talk about those here. We won't, okay? But it's the funny thing of, he'd be absolutely embarrassed by all this. He'd be turning around now and saying, "You soft bunch of buggers. Why are you being so emotional about all this?" You know, he was that guy, wasn't he? You know, he was. You can't do the man justice. You just simply can't do the man justice. What does do the man justice was, you know, after the funeral, I was talking to Dave Seeger, you know, talking to Victoria in between everything, and Lucy, Gooner, and all those people, and the love and the care they had for Dave, and just the goodwill they had for him. You know, Lucy and Victoria, you know, it was just kind of heartbreaking feeling their pain. You talk to them, and they've lost a real friend. They've lost somebody in their lives, you know, and we all have. You know, we know that, but they were particularly close. You know,
that's a pretty apt sound.
It is. Yes, I'm rambling now, and you know, it's like Jock, okay? This little Twitter group we kind of got. I never thought when I joined Twitter I'd meet anybody as great as you guys. And then you add Dave Faber into the mix, and you just kind of think, how bloody lucky am I? It's not a bad world, is it? People talk about the poison of social media and all the things that can go wrong. And
it's a double-edged sword, but the edge that you choose to deal with and you choose to participate in can be a very, very nice edge, and it's led to, I mean, it's led to me meeting Daryl and Ethan. It's led to me meeting Victoria, and just in the last week or two, and that's, you know, that's why I'll never get off of social media. I have to discipline myself a little bit better, but it gives you so much in the connection.
It's that thing that he's a beacon of shine. He's a shining light. He's a beacon in a sea of nonsense. Okay, you talk about all these people doing things for money nowadays, and Dave just did it because he loved the Arsenal. Because his dad took him and Janice to watch the Arsenal when they were kids, and he never lost that. And, you know, if you want to talk about what's good about Arsenal Football Club, if you want to talk about what, you know, people talk about classy Arsenal, that's Dave. That's Dave.
Yeah.
Dave is classy Arsenal because, yes, he has a side to him, okay, like everybody does, but it wasn't a nasty side. It was a roguish, lovely, fun side where he could be cutting and he could be fun, and the man was just, I just loved him, you know. It broke my heart last year. It broke my bloody heart.
Well, and as always, very eloquently stated. And I want to make sure we're running long. I hope that you have a few more minutes, because there's a few more people's tributes that I'd like to get in before we wrap up with an audio that is probably going to send me over the edge. But first from Jason Schrader, another ABW either alum or, because I haven't seen him in years, but he wants to share some thoughts, and so let's hear from Jason.
So Dave Faber, unbelievable man, unbelievable Arsenal fan. I think everybody who interacted with him understands the impact that he's had, not just through his blog, but he's one of those people who just genuinely makes you want to be a better person when you're around him. It's unbelievable the impact he's had on me. He's one of the first few Arsenal blogs that I ever read when I became an Arsenal fan. And every time I try to complain, I think about some of the stories that he would tell us of his days watching the Arsenal in 70s and 80s, and it's unreal. It's unreal. So always got Dave in my thoughts.
So am I correct that this text is coming from inside the house?
Yes, that is. Yeah, that'll be my wife in the other room.
It's like the it's like that movie, like the phone call's coming from inside the house.
She texted me 10 minutes ago saying, "Do you want to be here?" And I text back saying no, but she's persistent, bless her.
Oh, that's fantastic. I thought I saw her say that that Woody's account was Sandra. That's hilarious. A few others. Jill Armstrong, who is, I've met her on Twitter, son of Geordie Armstrong, Arsenal legend, and someone who, if I could only have the kind of relationship and affection with my daughter, who will come back around. She's 19, so, Ethan's age. But the way that Jill honors on a daily basis her father is absolutely incredible. And she had some words that she put together for Dave, if I can find them. Here we go. David Faber, the magic of Holic. One of my first encounters on social media was with David. A friend sent me a link to GoonerHolic's blog. It was about Dad, Geordie Armstrong, a true Arsenal legend. It was the 12th of October, 2013. I hadn't really been on Twitter long, as to be perfectly honest. Was very nervous as I didn't know how my account would be received. Dave's kind words reassured me immediately. I remember a reply on the thread said, "The magic of Holic. I never met Dave in person, but I felt like I knew him. Was so supportive to me, and we shared a similar taste in music and would often laugh as we shared stories. He was a really special person and will never be forgotten. God bless Dave." From Jill Armstrong. I'm told, and here's I'm told that there is a banner that is going to be unfurled over the next coming days and in the best possible way, given lockdowns and such. But this is a digital copy of it.
That's brilliant.
You can expect to see this in N5 pretty soon. Maybe a little bit in N7. I don't know what the plans are, but this is, I'm sure we'll get a picture and we'll tweet it out of the actual banner being unfurled out there. But I know that a lot of his close friends and mates have chimed in to create that banner. And in the day of banners being unfurled, I think that's going to be one of my preferable banners that are being unfurled. Let's put it that way. Comments from the Arsenal Football Supporters Club from Steve Kell. I knew Dave for many years, and we often messaged each other outside of football to discuss Arsenal and what was going on. But more often than not, we always finished up talking about music, a love affair that we both shared as much as we did about the Arsenal. I knew that Dave was ill quite early when he told me he couldn't go to a gig with me to see a few bands that we liked, and told me he wasn't up to it. We're similar in age, and we both seem to recall the same things in the same way. I don't know a single person who has a bad word to say about him. He was a very special person, and the fact that this tribute is happening is testament to that. A quality Dave had was the ability to be in a few people's company, and each person felt that Dave was there to see him. As a comment, I couldn't agree with that more. When he held court one-on-one with about 20 people at the same time, and you didn't realize until later that you were standing in a group of 20 people. We will miss him a lot, says Steve, but have great memories that I'll keep forever. So thank you to Steve and the Arsenal Football Supporters Club in London for that. The last couple of things I have, I got an email this morning from Laith Yusuf, and it was too late included and put up on the screen, and it's long, but it's a special email, and so I'd like to read it off to you guys. I know we're hearing a lot of my voice today, but sorry, it's my voice speaking as Laith. I miss my friend Dave. I was proud to call Dave Faber a friend. He was a genuine North Londoner, having lived in Canterbury before moving to Buckinghamshire. His dad was a Gooner, and Dave would regale me with tales about how he would be taken to Arsenal from the moment he could toddle in the course of more than 60 years' support of our great club. I would sit back and savor Dave speaking about the old teams of the past, good and bad. When Dave spoke, you listened, not in a look-at-me way. No, far from it. Dave was an old-school gentleman who never raised his voice. You listened to what he said simply because what he had to say was always worth listening to. He always tried to be upbeat, so when he gave you an opinion on a particular player or manager, it would be laced with empathy and intelligence, as well as a quiet, understated passion and dignity. Quite simply, Dave was a true gentleman, respected by everybody who came into contact with him. As a journalist who covers Arsenal, I used to ask Dave for comments for the sports pages. He never missed a deadline, and he was unfailingly positive. while offering informed opinion based on a lifetime of following the Arsenal. Many a time I would fire questions at him just to listen to his take. His favorite player, Dennis Bergkamp. His favorite match, the Miracle of Copenhagen. Favorite win over Spurs, winning 1-0 at the Lane in 1971. I loved his description of the first memory of Highbury when he told me Dad used to park in Highbury Fields, and so that view from the top of Avenel Road as suddenly this football stadium, this beautiful football stadium, appears in the most unlikely of locations, being a nipper walking from Highbury Fields to the ground via the newsagent to buy the Islington Gazette, into Mick's restaurant at Highbury Barn for liver and bacon, followed by syrup pudding and custard and catch up with everything that went on at my club that week. I spent a very long day there on the day we left, just soaking everything in. There were tears, and there are tears in the chat room right now, I can see. I remember asking him once what made him proud to be a Gooner. What he told me should be shared across the ages for anyone who wants to understand why the Arsenal are different. What makes me proud to be a Gooner? Where do you start? The history and traditions attached to our magical club, the clock, the flower arrangements in the visiting team's colors, the Arsenal Foundation, the gold Premier League trophy, he said. He also recalled the good times under Arsene Wenger, or as he so elegantly phrased it, the teams he inherited and built on his first decade were packed with players of wonderful talent and commitment. But Dave was so much more than one of the most loyal and knowledgeable fans on the planet. He was a good man, loved, respected, and admired by so many. Many a time he would offer me wise counsel, something which I greatly appreciated at the time and still do. His loss has left a big gap for so many people on so many levels. I am proud to have called Dave my friend. I miss my friend Dave. Laith Yusuf, Gooner fanzine editor. Long, but I wouldn't take a single word out of it because I mean that's everything encapsulated in an email. So thank you, Laith, for sending that in. I'm just going to quickly wrap up with one comment from myself and then someone who can speak for herself. Dave will be missed, and by so many of us who knew him and others who knew of him. He was the rare blogger and podcaster who didn't seem to rankle anyone's sensibilities, always classy, always dignified until the end, whether being critical or not. His voice reeked of dignity, if there is such a concept. I remember Dave as being with the Arsenal fan base, and I don't like that word fan base because it's so hyper generalistic, but he is what the Arsenal fan base to me truly is. A family of good-hearted people, not the current stereotype that so many people wrongly assume is the mainstream of our support. Support comes in all sorts of shapes and sizes these days, but for Dave, it only came in one: unconditional. The Arsenal way is still alive and will, thanks to folks like Dave. Rest in peace, my friend. And with that, I want to thank Amanda and Paul, Laurie, Curtis, Jason, Dan. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to Victoria and Sandra, who were so vital in helping us put together this tribute. Daryl and Ethan, thank you so much having been at my father's funeral, I heard hours and hours of people rant and rave about my dad, and I thought it would get to the point where I'm like, I don't want to hear this anymore, and it just never did. So I can only hope that this hour and a half has been something like that for the two of you. And I just really, really appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you.
And thank you to Arsenal for being the constant that's brought us all together over the years. And so the final video that we have is from a lovely lady named Pauline, who is Dave's partner for 25 years. And she was kind enough to put together a message, which I've linked up to a couple of pictures that I think are just very, very special. So without any further ado.
Hi, I'm David's partner of 25 years. It was so overwhelming, the amount of people who loved and respected him. And I also appreciated the support and respect shown to me by the Arsenal family. He loved everything Arsenal. When he went to a match, I would go out with friends and we called ourselves the Arsenal Widows. If he took me shopping and there was a match on TV, I had to run around the supermarket so that we were back for kick-off. But I would do it all again in a heartbeat. I miss him terribly, as I know you all do in many different ways. Thank you again for all of your kindness in remembering Dave. Stay safe. Warm wishes to all of you.
And thank you to Pauline, to Daryl, to Ethan, to Rowan and Janice and everybody for sharing Dave with us all these years. Hope you all have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. Let's appreciate and love each other and remember that results are a game, relationships are life. Cherish the relationships. Come on, you Gooners.